It's a good matching based on science of the level of risk with the kind of monitoring and the kind of monitoring with the kind of restriction.
All right, let's bring in Dr. Seema Yasmin, public health professor in Dallas and a former disease detective at the CDC, and Dr. Frank Esper, an infectious disease specialist. First of all, I think we have to talk, but we want to talk about the guidelines, but I think we also have to just talk about this moment of success. We see another healthcare worker stricken by this disease. This has got to feel like a victory, and I don't mean to put it in such sort of blank terms, but this is a victory to know that we are sending another healthy person home. She has a road for Dr. Seema, but we're getting to see her go home.
Isn't this fantastic news? It's so reassuring to see that with good medical care, with quick diagnosis, we can actually treat people really well and have Ebola survivors. What's interesting, though, is that Amber Vincent, for example, has become better very quickly compared to other Ebola survivors. Dr. Kent Brantley fell sick in Liberia. It was about 3 weeks, Michaela, before he actually made that full recovery. So Amber Vincent fought the virus a lot quicker. We think, again, that's because of this quick diagnosis and really careful monitoring of electrolytes in the blood. That's things like sodium, potassium, making sure those levels stay good.
And Nina Pham, of course, was released even sooner. So both of these nurses, who, by the way, are the only two people to catch Ebola in the United States, both of them have been released. So, Dr. Esper, what does this mean, or how should this influence our public policy here if we are showing that with early detection and the monitoring and the measures that we take, since the obvious, really just horrendous way Thomas Eric Duncan was handled at first in Dallas, since that, things seem to be fairly well in order here.
Well, it's true. We need to remain vigilant to ensure that we identify very quickly those people who are coming down with this infection. It's true of any infection, not just Ebola, but the sooner you're able to establish a diagnosis, the sooner you are able to start the patient on therapy, and in this case it's just supportive therapy, the better people do in the long term. The better they survive, and they get better much quicker. So I think it's not too surprising that for the individuals that we found very quickly, that we were able to get them well very quickly.
Dr. Yasmin, as a professor of public health and, of course, a disease detective, I'm curious your take on these new guidelines. We've talked a lot about the fact that this is sort of an organic response, if you will, that we're learning as we're going. How do you feel about these guidelines? Are they going far enough, or do you expect to see further tweaks, if you will?
So what I'm hearing from other public health experts and infectious disease doctors from across the U.S. is that these new CDC guidelines are a good thing because they align a lot more with the science. And instead of lumping everybody into the same boat and saying, hey, you've just come back from West Africa, this is what we're going to do with you, it kind of divides people into those different categories, so high risk, some risk, low risk but not zero risk, and then no risk, and then treats them accordingly based on what kind of exposure they've had. So we're hearing from medical experts that they're happy that this aligns a lot more with the science, a lot more with what we know about Ebola.
Dr. Esper, do you think, though, these distinctions are crystal clear? Because between the high risk and some risk and low risk and no risk, you get a lot of shades of gray there.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of overlap between individuals and who was exposed and who has a high exposure versus a low exposure. Certainly, we always have a tendency to err on the side of caution. That's just how we are. We want to ensure the safety of the patient as well as everyone else around them foremost, and so we may end up, if there's a question, we move them into a more severe category. But it is very true that the CDC guidelines are definitely spot on with the science as we know it right now. But it is true that we are learning on the job.
We are learning on the job. There is some success here, and we should celebrate that. Let's hope some of that success can be replicated in West Africa, where they certainly need to save more lives. To both of you, our thanks, as always, Dr. Yasmin and Dr. Esper. We appreciate it.
All right, ahead for us at this hour, what was the dirty word uttered by this candidate for governor that we were about to show you, hopefully?
Right there.
What did he say? Did he mean to say it? And could a Republican have ever gotten away with saying it? That's next.
Hi.
We're looking